All right, we're back. It is time to re-engage the Poly 301, creating a Poly 301 project from scratch challenge, day 2. We are in the YouTube Live studio here, and I am today going to be trying to edit some of that initial outline that I created last time, or over the last couple of sessions, into a workable composition 4. And so we'll see how far I get. I'm going to at least go through the introduction in this session. And of course, the first thing that I should do when I'm trying to create a composition 4, trying to do my speed run here, is I'm going to, of course, want to read the rubric carefully. And so you'll see I'm going to do that. The assignment asks you to write the front end of a fully formed research paper. Of course, this content is familiar. It's an introduction, a lit review. We've already done that in compositions 1 and 3, so that should be very nice to see. But of course, there's this new section, a theory section, which will explain how the IV and DV are related, why they're related to each other. 2, discuss potential threats to validity introduced by antecedent or intervening variables. And then 3, conclude with a statement of hypothesis. And so I'm going to try to do the first part, the introduction, which is worth 20 points out of the 100%. And I'll try to hit some of the theory as well in this session, just to give you a little bit of a feel for what that should look like. I'm going to skip over the lit review right now because, A, you already have turned in a composition 3 that looks really good, a good lit review. And so also it's going to take me a little bit more work to go through some of these papers and read them really carefully. So that is something I'll hold off on. Obviously, the formatting and everything is the same as it was. But here's the introduction. Requirements. This is something I want to definitely read before I start. So I want to introduce the research topic using good conventions of a research topic. You can see I've got some of this stuff here, the topic, right? Really the background can go first in my organization here. Background, topic, right here, relevant information that explains why the topic is timely and interesting. And then of course we have the formal statement of the research question. And so I just did this as a placeholder here. We don't need to pull out the IV or the DV in this because those are going to be clear once we state the research question fully in the introduction. So the IV, the DV, and the population, unlike composition 1, that's not something that I'm going to have to necessarily hammer out in different sections. I will instead just be able to write the RQ and it'll look really good. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see what we can do here. I'm going to first of all pull out the title page. Don't know why that didn't center. Should probably save this before we go any further. My live stream project. And call this composition 4. Here we go. My research project. Actually, we'll give this a substantive title since I like substantive titles. Okay, so we could call this Public Response to Health Crises, the Role of Partisan Attachments. Because if you recall from last time, I know I'm kind of breezing through this because I already reviewed it in the last live stream. Partisan attachments is kind of my IV, but really it's especially co-partisan attachments, which we'll get into. And the DV, of course, is whether the public, instead of response to, I think we could be more specific, even in the title. Public concern over health crises. Okay, so here's my composition 4. Start this up. Of course, we can, in this first piece of the paper, we can just use introduction. Oh, by the way, this is all in the wrong format here. We want times. We want 12-point font. We want this to be remove spaces after paragraph. We want double spacing here. Okay, now we're getting a little bit better. So let's put on our writing caps here and try to start an introduction in a way that's going to be compelling. So I can't think of a more compelling way to start my introduction than to, again, relate this back to some of the sort of anecdotes that are having an impact on my life and everyone else's lives in the most recent time period. So we could say something like, this is bold, in March of 2020, the American economy ground to a halt in the as an ongoing public health emergency dominated public discourse and dramatically restructured the daily lives of everyday. Well, I said American up here already, so that's kind of like sketchy. Restructured society, sure. American economy ground to a halt as an ongoing public health emergency dominated public discourse and dramatically restructured society. The COVID-19 viral outbreak, which witnessed dramatic levels of contagion and a worldwide public health response triggered governments from the municipal to the state and governments at all levels to respond with drastic and immediate action. While the consequences of the COVID-19 viral outbreak are still not yet fully known. I mean, we know that it's really bad. Oh, by the way, I've really kind of forgotten to discuss like the fact that this is extremely deadly, right? That's probably something that could go in my introduction. Viral outbreak, which witnessed dramatic levels of contagion and a worldwide public health response, through governments at all levels to respond. Oh, I said response and respond a couple times. To take, how about that? Take drastic and immediate action. The crisis has yielded a death toll which is still rising. While the consequences of the COVID outbreak are still not yet fully known, we could say public reactions have already been documented. Early stage, we could say maybe. Public reactions have already been documented. In one notable example, Brian Schaffner of Tufts University provided an initial glimpse at the potential for political attachments, the potential for the role of political attachments. This is becoming a kind of a messy sentence. Brian Schaffner of Tufts University examined how political attachments might drive such reactions. In a preliminary analysis, Schaffner, and here we'll say 2020, Schaffner 2020 demonstrates, we probably want to be in present tense when we're writing about research, demonstrates that media markets that strongly favored Trump in the 2016 election were exhibited relatively little interest in Google search terms like hand sanitizer in the early stages of the crisis. And of course, draft from 2020, I'm going to put in here, we're excited for now. And I'm just going to put in here, just as a placeholder, because we'll be working on this works cited page later. Schaffner 2020. Actually, this shouldn't be in parentheses even in Schaffner Ryan 2020. And then here I'm going to put brackets to indicate I'm going to work on this later. Link to the online analysis he did for Vox. So I'll cite that Vox article later. Again, this is not a tier 1 source, but it's actually really useful to cite because it provides a compelling reason to do this study, right? This is, again, sort of part of my initial thought processes about this viral outbreak kind of research topic as a source of inquiry. So, consequences are still not yet fully known. Early stage public reactions have been documented. Here's this. Media markets that strongly favored Trump exhibited relatively little interest in Google search terms like hand sanitizer. Conversely, media markets with strong Clinton support in the 2016 election saw dramatic rises in searches for these products. This exploratory analysis, we might call it. This exploratory analysis points to the possibility that partisan identities have led to gaps in public concern over the COVID-19 health crisis. And so, of course, we want to go back to our outline. This is kind of just a brief intro kind of thing, getting us interested in the topic. I would say that I'm interested in the topic so far. Hopefully you are too. We want to also, again, introduce the research topic. Given this salient example of a given the salient example, it seems pressing. Well, this salient example shows us that more research on partisan reactions to public health emergencies is currently needed. See, this is why writing is hard, right? Salient example shows us need for additional research on partisan reactions to public health emergencies. In the future, it seems unclear whether such patterns, I guess really it's not really in the future, it's kind of in the present as well. It seems unclear whether such patterns are consistent across health crises, or if this gap in partisan concern is merely a product of circumstance. This leads us, well, instead of this leads us, we could just say, therefore, I advance the following research question. Here we can go back to our outline because we've already specified this very nicely, right? Well, let's go back. All right, here's the research topic. We've introduced the topic, right? Partisan reactions here. So really, this is actually getting into the research question, right? Gonna format this better. Actually, I'll use the right click and then I'll put in this right here, merge formatting, so that it keeps the formatting that we want here. This is good. There we go. Okay, so this is the better part of a useful introduction here. We can see again we've got some nice background. We've obviously got the topic here, right? So maybe we want to make that topic statement a little bit more clear here, right? The crisis yield of death toll, which is still rising. Let's see. American economy grounded to a halt. COVID-19 crisis yield of death toll, which is still rising. Okay, early stage public reactions. See, this is the difficult thing, right? Is we want to identify that topic as carefully as possible to sort of tip off the reader that we're not just talking about COVID, we're talking about these things in general, right? So we could say, well, the consequences of the COVID are still not fully yet known. Early stage public reactions have already been documented. Before that even, we could say something like, the present study considers the determinants not of public health crises, but rather Americans' levels of concern over these important emergency events. So now we're thinking that we're trying to signal to the reader again, look, we're really talking about this one thing. You know, we can even sometimes use italicization to tip people off a little bit. Say, look, it's really levels of concern here that's so important. And so, yeah, I think this is at least the beginning of a useful introduction. I'll probably want to edit this down a little bit, make this a little bit clearer, a little bit nicer. But I think we're going to at least be able to work with this in the future. I will also say, though, that you probably want to have some kind of nice transition here as well. That would be really, really good to see. So we could say something like, well, let's think about it. Oh, of course, we want to bring in some of our other examples of crises, don't we? We had all this stuff, right? Public health crises in the United States are not new. From the SARS scare of an earlier decade to the mad cow disease. I actually don't quite remember when mad cow disease happened. We should probably find that out. Let's see. Let's see, when was this? Bovine spongiform encephalopathy. All right, look here. Here's your professor using Wikipedia. Again, this is just stuff to try to frame this. When was this? Epidemiology. It's like the 90s, right? Yeah. This was in the EU kind of first, right? Yeah. I think it was really the 90s that was the biggest thing. Well, anyway, we'll put a little flag there to suggest that we want to read up on some of these other reactions or public health crises. Americans are no strangers to the possibility of threats from virological or other disease vectors. I guess I could say viri instead of virological. Right? Isn't this right? It's not viruses, is it? What's viri? Okay, viruses. Anyway, to better understand how political scientists have examined public reactions to such threats, it is necessary to review the scholarly literature on these subjects. So here's the beginning of, I'll just put this here, lit review goes here. I'll skip over that for now. Here's the third part of my paper, the theory section. And we'll see that in just a moment. But we can see that this is not the best introduction in the world. There's probably a lot that I could do to try to shore this up a little bit, but at the very least it's got that good statement of the research question, and it seems to pretty clearly indicate my research topic, which is really the stuff that the introduction is most integrally trying to accomplish for now. We'll see that the introduction should have a little bit more in it once we get through compositions 5, 6, and finally 7. But for now, we've got a little bit of a background story as well. So I'm going to stop this live stream for now because it's been a few minutes, just to give it a chance to sort of break these videos up as it uploads into YouTube. And maybe I'll come back in a little while and I'll show you some of the ways that I would write up a theory for composition 4. So until next time.